my focus today is on, and in my practice, I've been practicing chiropractic and natural health care for about 30 years, since 85. And one of my goals and my focus is to help people take care of themselves. We've been taught in our culture that if there's something wrong, that you take a pill and you wait for your body to get better. And in times past, that's not how it was. In times past, we would nurture somebody and we would help them get better through a variety of means, and we'll talk about some of those today. What I have found in working with people is the more you can do on your own. Am I doing that by? Okay. The more you can do on your own to get healthy and get better, the better you're going to be. And in a society and a time that we're living in now, where there is so much instability, and if you read the scriptures and if you believe the prophets, we know that something is coming, and we know that our lifestyles will be changed, and we know that we will no longer be able to rely on what we refer to as the arm of flesh, meaning that we're going to have to rely on God. And often what God does for us is He inspires us and motivates us to be prepared in a variety of ways. And so one of the things that I do is I teach my patients how to take care of themselves. And we do it through natural means. We use herbal remedies. One of the things we do, and this was made actually this week, is we make remedies. We make different herbal formulas. We put them together, we shake them for a few weeks, we strain them, and we have these very, very powerful, effective herbal formulas that we can use in our home that actually cost just a fraction of the price you would pay going to a health food store or a grocery store. The key is being able to do things on your own. We'll talk about 5 different aspects of what I do with the people that come to see me. The first being the herbs and natural health care. The second being we teach people how to do allergy elimination. Isn't it interesting how allergies it's like an epidemic. When I was going to school back in the 60s, we didn't have the peanut table or the allergy table at the elementary schools, and now we see often several of those where we need to be careful of kids that can go into anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis is allergies in the extreme measure where you could actually stop breathing and you can die from an allergic response. Very, very real. And so we teach people how to take care of allergies. Here's the interesting thing about allergies. Most of the allergies that we come across are what we would call an acquired allergy, meaning you didn't used to be allergic, but now you are. If the body has the ability to develop or acquire an allergy, it also has the ability to undevelop or unacquire that allergy, right? Because the body is dynamic. We know that sometimes the allergies are really bad, and other times you're not as reactive. We know there's a component that deals with the immune system. Allergies are simply the immune system overreacting to something that should be considered normal. When I pet a cat, that should be considered normal. It shouldn't be the signal for my eyes to water and my nose to run. And so what we do to treat someone with allergies is remarkably simple. Some of you may have heard of a technique called Nabutropad Allergy Elimination Technique, or NAET, or NATE, or NAET. I mean, no one knows quite what to say with it. And what I've done is I've studied the NAET, I've studied something called Bioset, which is, I think, the next step above it, and then something called Precision Meridian Therapy, where you balance the meridian systems. The essence of the allergy treatment that is something that you can do. That is something that a child can do. Quick story, I had an 8-year-old that returned to my office, and she said, my friends can play kickball with me now. And I thought, oh, well, that's nice. And she said, no, she was allergic. She couldn't go out on the grass. And so she pulled some grass from the schoolyard, and I rubbed the points, and now she can play kickball with us. An 8-year-old could do this treatment. And that's the thing you need to understand, is the treatments can be learned, can be done by anybody. And that's what we want. The simple remedy is you simply hold in your hand the thing that you're sensitive or allergic to while we balance the acupuncture points. We rub the points. You don't even need to use needles. And so you stimulate those points by rubbing them, and we've got charts that show you which points to do, and it works. I had a patient that was highly allergic to crab meat. She carried an EpiPen. An EpiPen is epinephrine to basically buy you enough time to get to the hospital before you stop breathing. And so she was very, very allergic to crab meat. We treated her for crab meat. She called me 3 weeks later, and she says, Dr. Christensen, I'm at the hospital. And I thought, uh-oh, what happened? And she laughed, and she says, no, I'm in the parking lot outside the emergency room door, and I've got some crab meat here I'm going to eat. I just want to be close by just in case. And so she ate the crab meat, and she says, I'm fine, I'm going home. And you can do that with peanuts too. However, you have to use some common sense, right? I'm not going to do a treatment with someone with peanuts and then say, let's have peanut butter sandwiches together. But again, often with repeated treatments, and here's the brilliance of this home treatment. You can repeat a treatment again and again. And so some of those severe, really strong ones, we may need to treat for multiple times. When I practiced in Northern California, my average office visit was $70. I had a guy that came in 11 times before he was finally cleared for his milk allergy. $770 to be cleared for a milk allergy. He was thrilled. However, if you could learn how to do this on your own and say, you know what, I'm just going to treat it, every day, every other day for a while until I'm good. That's what we want to do. And so that's the brilliance of learning some of these really quite simple techniques so that we can manage and take care of ourselves. How do you know what you're allergic to? You can be tested. I mean, there are blood tests. There's a scratch test. There's what's called an electrodermal test with the computer or with a muscle test. Often, I don't need to tell somebody what they're allergic to. They know, right, through experience. And if in doubt, you can treat, and you don't really need to know exactly what it is. And so, for example, if you know that something out here I'm allergic to, because it's springtime, how do you capture the exact thing that you're allergic to? Well, what you do is you get a plate of water, a pie pan with water. You set it outside for a day or two. Whatever is floating around in the air, some of it will settle in the water, right? You'll put that in a little jar, hold that in your hand, and there's your treatment vial or your treatment. And so I've got people that have brought me samples of the Provo Temple and Maple Mountain Steak Center and all these places where they're allergic to something, they're not sure. And so I envision these sweet little ladies in the temple with their hankies rubbing surfaces to capture whatever it is, and then we treat them and they're fine. And so it's kind of exciting. And so we see that allergies are on the rise. Allergies are a function of the body's immune system. If the immune system is stressed and depressed, we become more susceptible to developing the allergies. There's also an allergic component that deals with our genetic predisposition. There are some people who will never get an allergy. Genetically, they're just not to. They're not going to. There are other people who get allergies at the drop of a hat. And so the point is, if we can start doing some of these home treatments, it works very effective. Shifting gears a little bit, we use herbal medicines. D&C section 42, it says that that those that don't have faith to be healed use herbs and mild foods. We'll talk a little bit more of mild foods the second half hour, but we use herbs. What are herbs? Herbs are simply concentrated foods. And so we use an herb, and the definition of a weed? A weed is an herb in the wrong place, right? So they're all herbs. If it's in the wrong place, it's a weed. We pull it. If it's in the right place, it's an herb. We use it medicinally. And so there are plants that are absolutely marvelous in if you believe in the Book of Mormon, that will remove the cause of disease, right? Alma chapter, is it 46:40? And so God has given us these plants and roots to remove the cause of disease. That's what we want to do. Too often we see in medicine management of illness. And so if you've got a thyroid problem, if you've got a heart problem, if you've got a blood sugar problem, they don't give you medicines to make you well. They give you medicines to manage your disease. Right? Is that always the case in medicine? It's not. A classic case of where they give you a medicine to make you well is an antibiotic. If you've got an infection that's gone rampant and is out of control, an antibiotic can save your life, right? But you're much better not to take an antibiotic unless your life is in jeopardy and you're in absolute crisis mode. Here's an interesting study that just came out. They showed that these antibiotic-resistant bacteria, like MRSA and some of these other ones, these flesh-eating viruses and bacteria, if you give somebody an antibiotic and you give them at the same time silver, colloidal silver, it will amplify the effectiveness up to 1,000 times of the antibiotic. And so if you ever are in need of taking an antibiotic, be sure to be taking some silver as well at the same time. Just a little bit, because it will amplify the effectiveness. The understanding is there are good things in medicine, there are good things in natural healing. We need to listen. And sometimes the Spirit will say, this is what you need to do, and sometimes it'll say, that's what you need to do. When someone comes to me with cancer and says, I want to fight this naturally, the answer from me has to be, we need to follow the Spirit. What does the Spirit say to do? I've had patients who are the most ardent supporters of natural health care have the Spirit say, you know what, you need the surgery. Or you need to do some chemotherapy or radiation. And I've had people who are definitely medical minded and they feel strongly prompted that no, I need to do this naturally. The point being is it may be different for each of us, and we need to respect that the Spirit knows our body, and it knows our financial situation, it knows our relationships, it knows the whole picture. And that's how we get well. When we're dealing with something like depression, for example, often it's a multi-pronged approach. And sometimes medications may be necessary to get you through a rough spot, but more often, if we can take care of our body by doing things on a natural way. There's a doctor in Oklahoma, a medical doctor, who has a depression clinic, and people check into his clinic, and he does amazing things with them, and he gets them off all their meds and all of this. And the way he does it, he says, you're going to drink 8 glasses of water a day. How many glasses of water have we been told to drink a day? 8. He says you're going to sleep 8 hours a night. Even if you're laying in bed awake, you're going to be in bed 8 hours a night. You're not getting up. You're going to exercise 6 days a week. You're going to get some sunshine. I mean, he goes through the list of all the things that all of us know that all of us should be doing, and guess what happens? Their depression goes away. He gets them off sugar, right? And does all of these, quote, natural things that are just so radical, and they get better. I mean, how radical is it to say, you know what, you need to go outside barefoot and stand on the grass for 15 minutes? It's called grounding or earthing. But we find when we start doing things that we all know we should be doing to begin with, amazing things start happening. And we know that people who are struggling from stress and anxiety and depression and all that, they know they're not getting enough sleep. They know they're not eating right. They know they're doing these things that are counterproductive. And so if you don't take anything away from this lecture, the thing you need to take away is you follow the Spirit, and you be open to what you're told. I have a handout that I put together years ago, and I've modified it through the years. It's Herbal First Aid in Healthcare. I wrote I wrote this book years ago with the intent that what do we do if we don't have the medical doctor's office, if we don't have what we call the doc in the box, you know, out on the corner. Are there things we can do on our own? And there's a lot of things we can do on your own, but the key is you got to become comfortable with them. If you're not comfortable with giving somebody an herbal remedy because they have a fever, you're not going to do it. But if somebody has a mild fever and they just don't feel good, and you use some natural means and they get better, that gives you some confidence and some encouragement. And so part of the key is start using natural things. I had someone concerned. I told them to make some chamomile tea and drink the tea. And they called me up distressed and they said, you know what, I drank 2 cups today. Am I going to be okay? And it's like, yeah, you're going to be fine. 2 cups of peppermint tea is fine. 2 cups of chamomile tea. The point is, until you incorporate things in your life, you're not going to be comfortable. I've got some of these for you at the end. I'm not going to give them to you now because you won't listen to me. You'll read the handout. And there's some at my booth number 25 when we finish. Another thing that I found was a great tool was what we call a cold laser. And long story short, I go to relicensing courses, you know, for continuing education and all that to keep my license up. And I went to a class not because I was so much interested in it, but it was local and it was on the weekend that I had open. That's sometimes what determines what we study. And so it was a class on cold laser therapy, and they showed us the cold laser, and I just wanted my hours, but it was interesting, and I started talking to the other doctors, and they said, oh yeah, we're getting great results with this, and they ran a special on the laser. Instead of being $17,000, it was going to be $3,000 off. And I made a decision for myself years ago, no impulse buying for pricey things. And so I said, okay, you know what, I'm not going to buy it, even though I think it would be good, and I don't have the money, but I could lease it, and so if I go home and I still feel like I want it, then I'll move forward. So after a few days, I decided, you know what, I think I should get this. It seems to show enough of the good results. And so I called the sales rep, and I left a message. She didn't call me back. In the meantime, I went to an acupuncture seminar, and in the course of the seminar, the instructor held up a little laser. I didn't bring one up here. Held up a little laser, and he says, you know, these lasers only cost $40, and a lot of practitioners like using this instead of the needles. And with that said, I thought, oh, I wonder what the frequency is. Well, in the first seminar, they drummed into our brain that it's got to be 635 nanometer frequency, less than 5 milliwatts energy output, or it's going to be too strong and it's not going to be as effective. So I looked at the little laser at the acupuncture seminar, 635 nanometers, less than 5 milliwatts. I thought, you know what, for 40 bucks, I'm going to buy this. And so I bought it and began experimenting with it. Oh, thank you. So this is the little laser. It's a laser pointer, but it's got the right frequency. And so I had this mole on my back, and if you came to me and showed me this mole and said, hey doc, what do you think of this? I would look at that and I say, you know what, that's a suspicious mole. That's code language in doctor talk for, dude, you got cancer, you need to go to the dermatologist and he can cut it out. So I had a suspicious mole that my wife noticed on my back, and she said, well, let's try the laser on it. And I thought, okay. So we held the laser against it for about 30 seconds, and she looked at it and she says, oh my goodness, it's all white around the edge. I thought, oh, that's interesting. So over the course of 2 weeks, we probably did about 10 sessions with the laser, about 30 seconds on it. I was drying off from a shower one morning, and I felt a little tug there, looked on the floor, and there was my mole. And so I called my wife in, and I said, come look at this. And she looked at my back, and she said, oh my goodness, you've got perfect baby skin under that. And so the point is that the cold laser has definite anti-cancer properties. It causes vasodilation, meaning it increases the circulation. It reduces inflammation. We use it on treating warts, on sore throats, on earaches, on all kinds of different things. Question? Tumors in the uterus, fibroid tumors. Yeah, you could use it on anything. In fact, it's safe enough that they use it in utero, meaning that if a baby has a problem, they'll shine the laser on mommy's tummy, and see benefits. The point is it's very, very safe. You cannot hurt yourself. I tell people you can't hurt yourself unless you jab yourself in the eye with it. And so it's a nice tool. It can help with back pain. In my manual that I've got acupuncture charts there. And so when we use an acupuncture chart, here's an interesting thing about acupuncture points. How do you know if you've got an acupuncture point that's active, that needs to be treated? It's really simple. It hurts. You push on it and it's like, ouch. And then I said, okay, that's one that we need to treat. So you look at the chart for let's say back pain, and there's 20 different points. I don't want to have to treat 20 different points if there's only 3 of them that are real active. And so what I'll do is I'll poke around and I'll find those 2 or 3 or 5 points that need to be treated, send you home with a laser, you do the treatment on yourself. And so because we know that multiple repetitious treatments are going to be better than coming to see me once a week. And that's one of the things they taught in the acupuncture course, or excuse me, the cold laser course, is it's going to be much more effective if you could do multiple treatments during the day. If you're coming to my chiropractic office and I'm charging you $60 every time you walk through the door for a laser treatment, you're not going to be coming in 3 times a day. But again, if you've got a little laser stylus that you can use at home, then you've got something that's worthwhile.
2 questions. Where do you buy those?
I sell them, or you can buy them online. Again, the key is you want the right frequency. So 635 nanometers, less than 5 milliwatts of energy output. Again, it's not the James Bond laser. It's not going to cut you in half. You can shine the light right in your eye. It's not going to make you go blind. It's a low frequency or low energy output. Shingles in their eye. You know, my general response is, you know, it's not going to hurt. Give it a try. Again, with shingles, the laser is just one tool. So shingles, write this down if you'd like. The herb lemon balm, the Latin name is Melissa officinalis, seems to be specific for the herpes zoster virus. And so we make an ointment out of the lemon balm. It's growing all over my yard because it's such a great herb. It smells like, if those remember, it smells like lemon pledge. And so it's a great herb that seems to be antiviral, specific for the herpes virus, whether it's herpes zoster, which is shingles and chickenpox, or herpes simplex, which is the cold sores and such.
What will the laser do for wet macular degeneration?
I don't know. You know, again, we're going to treat the eye points on other parts of the body. You can treat the eye by the reflex points on the ear, on the hand, on the foot. You need to be taking supplements for macular degeneration, bilberry and eyebright and things like that. And so again, what you'll notice when we talk about treating people with specific problems or illnesses, it's often a multi-pronged approach. It's not going to be just, you need to do just this, or you do that, and that's going to do it. You know, we're going to do nutrition, we're going to do herbs, we're going to do the cold laser, we're going to do an allergy elimination treatment, we're going to do emotional treatment. And so we work from a lot of different angles. The next thing we're going to talk about is emotional treatment. Here's the thing that's interesting, and we all know this is true. We all have experiences in life where we may not have the support or the skills or the tools or experience to deal with what we're going through. And so what we do is we stuff that emotion down. Many of you probably have the book entitled Feelings Buried Alive Never Die, right? And that's true. When you feel across somebody's shoulders and it's just really, really hard, and they say, oh, that's where I hold my stress, understand what they're really saying is, oh, this is the effect of me holding my emotions inside, right? And so we know that there are specific emotions that can be related to specific physical problems, right? And so we know that the emotion of grief is tied with the lungs. Have you ever seen somebody who's grieving and you hear this? It's a lung emotion, grief is. We know that fear is associated with the kidneys. We know that anger is associated with the liver. We experience emotions again and again and again, and it becomes a habit or a pattern in our life, and we can start developing diseases and different problems. Well, there's a way that we can help the body release these emotions. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they use the phrase, and I think it's brilliant, let go and let God. And that's what we need to do. Why is it that once you're baptized, once you're on that straight and narrow path, the three most important things we need to do is repent, forgive, and endure, right? And so what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is letting go. What is repentance? Repentance is changing our heart, right? There are a lot of people whose behaviors have radically changed for the better, but they're locked up in prison because they'll keep hurting people. The point is, if the heart changes, then things can change in us inside. And so one of the things that I teach and I've got another manual that teaches this. I call it Emotions and Angels and Faith to be Healed. And so we know that we can release these trapped emotions. And if you've heard of something called the emotion code, and I do a variety of the emotion code where you, in essence, send a signal to the body that says, you know what, let go of these things. You don't need to hang on to this anymore, and the body can change. Just a quick story. I had, let me see how we are time wise. I had a guy come to me. His mom sent him in, young 20-something guy, tattooed up and down, kind of a tough guy, and mom says he's just angry. And so guess what emotion we found? Anger. And so we release the emotion of anger, and we do it by, I roll these magnets down the acupuncture points down the spine. Didn't see him again. His mom called me 2 months later, and she said, "What did you do to my boy?" And I thought, uh-oh. I said, "What happened?" She says, "Well, he's come back to church, and he wants to go to the temple with his wife." And so within a year, took him that time to straighten a few things up, went to the temple, got sealed, had a baby. His response is, "I don't know what the heck he did. You know, he just rubbed some magnets down my back, and I wasn't angry anymore." And so to me, that's kind of cool. That if you can find, you know, emotions that are high charged and impacting our life in a negative way, that we can make some changes. Now here's my other question. Those of you that know people who do the emotion code and practice, my question to them was, has there ever been a time someone's come to you for an emotion treatment and you haven't found any emotions? What do you think the answer is? Never. There is always emotions. And for me, not good enough. I don't want someone to have to be treated indefinitely forever. And so I began pondering the idea, what's the end of this? How can we not keep heaping upon ourselves all these emotions? I mean, all this fear and anger and frustration and depression and anxiety, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so I experience something, and I go to my practitioner and he releases it and I feel better, and then I experience it again and I have, you know, it's got to stop, right? And so as I pondered this, the answer came to me, and the answer was, as you learn and progress and come unto Christ, there will come a point where you are so filled with the light of Christ that you will be running what I call virtues. Here's the spectrum. The telestial level of emotion would be the emotion of being mean. Have you ever met somebody that's mean? That's a telestial experience. What is the step up from that? Nice, right? And so if I'm not mean, but now I'm nice, that's definitely better. And so I would classify niceness, if you will, as a terrestrial emotion. However, tell me your name again. Norman. If I want something from Norman, could I be really nice to him? And Norman will say, you know what, I see right through that niceness. It's just a form of manipulation, right? And so nice is definitely a step up. It's a terrestrial emotion. What would the celestial emotion in that continuum be? It would be kindness, right? If I say Norman is one of the kindest people that I know, what does that say about him? Does it say that his behavior is manipulative? Or does it says, no, that's his nature? And so here's the end result of our emotional lives. Our end result means we need to be virtuous in every aspect of it. Have you ever seen someone in sacrament meeting get up and they proclaim to the whole congregation that they love everybody, right? And when I was younger, I thought, you know what, you don't even know me. How could you love me? But having felt that, I know. Because when you are filled with the love and the light of Christ, your perception changes, doesn't it? If I'm looking at some kids that are misbehaving and I am full of love and compassion, my perception of them is going to be different than if I'm irritated and I'm not. And so when we start working with people on an emotional level, you need to understand that as a practitioner, on the other end of it, we need to be living, quote, the higher law. We need to be running virtues in our life. When Christ was crowded in the throng of people, and the woman with the issue of blood touched the hem of his garment, what did he say? I feel that virtues left me. What is that virtue? Is it something magic that only he had? It's not. And so the goal is to run virtues in our life. And the only way that you can become a virtuous person... Oh. Is that what's making the noise? You are so smart.
It's the wind. Wind on your microphone.
She's still smart. Okay. Is that better? Okay. And so the point is that healing, whether we're healing physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, needs to include transformation. That's what it's all about. When we send missionaries throughout the world, what are they trying to help people do? They're trying to help people transform. They want people to experience the mighty change. They need to be born again. They need to become new creatures in Christ, right? And so that's the goal for each of us. What does Alma say about the mighty change? Well, you had the mighty change before. Do you still have it now? You need to experience it again and again and again and again. It needs to be continuous in our lives. And that's what healing is all about. Understand this: Christ suffered not only for our sins, but he also suffered for our broken bones and our broken hearts and our broken minds and our broken spirits. The whole package. I had one of my patients explaining to my receptionist that, well, Christ wasn't a woman. He really doesn't understand woman problems, and he never was old, and he doesn't understand old age problems. And I testify to you today, baloney. He understands all of it. The atonement was infinite, and it's eternal. It is more broad spectrum than anything we can imagine. And so our healing needs to be in that vein. If God has provided us herbs and plants, if he's provided us ways to work with the energies of the body, those are things that we can utilize. The more you learn, the more tools you will have at your disposal. And so my encouragement to me and each of you that feel prompted or called to natural health care, learn as much as you can. It's like when I teach my sourdough classes. I teach sourdough and I say, this is how I do it. I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying the bread tastes pretty darn good, but this is how I do it. Go to someone else's sourdough class and see how they do it, and to another one and see how they do it. Learn from as many different sources as you can, and then you'll be able to say, well, this is how I do it, and that's what we do. let's shift gears a little bit and get into the kitchen. I believe with all of my heart that the most important room in our house as far as healing is the kitchen. And the more we can, quote, get into the kitchen, the better chances we are of getting healthy. When I see somebody that says, I hate cooking, I just don't even want to deal with it, I'm old now, so I can say whatever I want to my patients. I tell them, well, you're not going to get well. And so, let's not waste my time and yours, because unless you're willing to make some changes in the kitchen, you're not going to get well. And you might as well keep going to the doctor, keep taking the drugs. They can keep taking, parts out. I had a guy in my office a week or so ago, and his kids are all medical doctors. And one of his sons, who's an emergency room physician, sent him to me. And I had to tell him, you're dying one piece at a time. If I'm going to die, I want to die all at once. I don't want to have my kidney die, and then have my gallbladder die, and then my appendix die, and then my spleen die, and you're going to have to take off my feet because of my diabetic neuropathies. I mean, let's die all at once, healthy. Look at how Elder Perry died. I mean, I said to my family during the last conference, he's going to live forever. He looks the same as he did when I was on my mission in the 70s, right? I mean, he hasn't changed. And then all of a sudden, his health went boom, and he died. That's how you're supposed to do it, where you live to a ripe age, and when you're done, God calls you home. And so healing in the kitchen. We see a lot of a condition that did not exist when I was in school 30 years ago. The condition is called gluten intolerance. It never came up. It never came up. The closest thing to it that came up was celiac disease. And celiac disease is a genetic predisposed condition where your body cannot break down gluten. You don't have the tools or the enzymes to break gluten down, and so you need to stay away from sources of gluten if you have celiac disease. Today, if you have really, really bad gluten intolerance, they just call it celiac disease, because people who are really sick, they want to have a disease named to it. It makes them feel better. I mean, truly it does. And so we give disease titles to things that are just symptoms. And that's what this one is. And so let's take somebody who's gluten intolerant. I absolutely honor and respect the condition, because it does exist. And there are people who if they have gluten in their diet, absolutely are as sick as sick can be, right? And so we acknowledge that this is a condition. The question is where the heck did it come from? Because when I was in school in the early 80s, they didn't have it. And so here's something that happened that was very interesting. In 1984, a company called Fleischmann's developed what's called a rapid rise yeast. In other words, the yeast, if you use their rapid rise yeast, will cause the bread to rise twice as fast. Pretty cool, right? How many of us have made bread in like an hour? I mean, is that just the coolest? The problem is the grains are not designed to be metabolized or processed that quickly. There is something called phytic acid, and what phytic acid is, it's like a saran wrap sheath around the grain or the nut or the seed, and it prevents it from germinating. I imagine between us here, we've got a fair amount of wheat in our basements, right? And hopefully none of that wheat is germinating right now. It's just sitting there saying it's just waiting for its time. The reason it can do that is phytic acid. Now, phytic acid protects it, but it's also an irritant to the digestive tract. And so if the cow wanders into the wheat field and starts munching on the wheat, that phytic acid is going to make it say, I don't feel so good. I'm gonna go browse and munch somewhere else, and it does. And so the way that phytic acid gets broken down is we soak it. So if we get it wet, if I'm going to plant that grain of wheat and I get it wet and it's nice and warm and it's in some soil, all of a sudden that phytic acid is going to dissolve and it's going to say, oh, it's time to grow, and it'll shoot up and start growing. Brilliant mechanism that God put in there. it takes about 6 to 8 hours to break that phytic acid down. And so if I'm making my bread and I'm letting it rise in an hour and then baking it, that phytic acid isn't broken down. It's an irritant to the digestive tract. It binds up the minerals in the gut, and we end up with what's called a leaky gut, right? Have you heard of leaky gut syndrome? That's the next step to developing allergies and all kinds of different problems. And so one of the problems with gluten intolerance is the phytic acid isn't broken down, and we have a damaged digestive tract. The next issue is the gluten itself, which is difficult. Interesting to note, when you make this rapid rise bread that we all buy at the grocery store, because guaranteed, if you want to have a bakery and you want to make more money, if you can make twice the bread in half the time, that's a good thing. And so that's what they're all doing. They're using this rapid rise yeast with the what's called the anti-nutrients not completely broken down. And so when we make a sourdough, and this is the bread that Moses ate, this is the bread that Jesus Christ ate, this is the bread that Joseph Smith ate, it ferments over a longer period of time. When Moses told the children of Israel, we got to skedaddle out of Egypt, you don't have time to make bread, I can promise you they weren't using Fleischmann's rapid rise yeast. Or otherwise he would have said, no, go ahead, we got time to make bread. But they didn't, and so they made the unleavened bread. And so they could get out, because they didn't have the 24 hours to allow it to rise. When Christ declared, I am the bread of life, I promise you it was not a derogatory statement against himself, saying, I'm going to poison you because I'm the bread of life. That's not what he meant. He meant that wheat was for man. Wheat was good. And so if wheat is prepared properly using a sourdough start, that sourdough mechanism will break down the phytic acid. It breaks down the gluten. They did a study, and there was a group of scientists / bakers in Italy. Do you know that most of the good food research is going on outside of the United States? Why do you think that is? Because we can't conduct research on food or nutrition in the United States very well because of the monopoly of the drug companies. They will not allow that. And so even though every once in a while you hear that if you eat, 6 or 5 or 12 servings of fruits and vegetables a day will help you against cancer, right? We've all heard that. How many of our medical doctors are telling us, if you just eat healthier, you wouldn't have to take these drugs. Again, medicine is more designed to manage illness than to turn it around and make you well. There is no drug that you can take that's going to make you healthier. It's true. And so we've got these bakers in Italy, and they mixed up some sourdough start. They used the San Francisco sourdough start. Everybody boasts that theirs is the best. I'm here to tell you that mine is the best. This is one I got from a neighbor who got it from her BYU professor in the 70s. It's from Czechoslovakia, 1912. It rises like nobody's business. And so this literally here was probably about a fourth of the way up here last night. And I've got it in my stand. If you want a good sourdough start, I give them away. And so if you're inclined to make sourdough bread. Anyways, what they did is they took a lump of the bread that they mixed up, and soaking the grains, just getting it wet in a lump of dough constitutes as soaking the grains. They took a sample of it, and they measured there were 75,000 parts per million of gluten in that bread. They let it sit for 12 hours. They took another sample of the same bread, and it went from 75,000 parts per million of gluten down to 12. Not 12,000, down to 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And they said that even a person with really bad celiac disease would be able to eat this bread. And that's what we find. We find that when we eat sourdough bread, that it's partially digested, it's partially broken down. It's excellent for people who are diabetic. They handle it. It's not going to make the blood sugar go crazy. Even the cheap crummy white bread. I teach my kids, the whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead. And
So why does your start white?
because I used white flour. And here's what I find is when I'm just mixing my start, it's just convenient, and it tends to like the white flour better. But that's the extent of the whiteness that gets into my bread, because I grind my grain fresh. So it's ground and it's put into the bread, within 10 minutes. And so does it work with it works with any flour. I mean, sourdough.
Does the wheat have the 6 hours to break down that acid you're talking about?
Yeah, so when I'm making bread, I'm typically going to mix it up the night before and then let it sit overnight, and then it doubles or triples in size, and then we form the loaves and let those rise and then bake it. And so again, when you're making sourdough, it's going to rise a minimum of 6 hours. This sourdough start is very, very mild. If you've ever had sourdough bread and someone tells you, oh, well, you got to get used to the flavor, my feeling is nonsense. Who's in charge here? The sourdough or you? And if you have a good sourdough start, it will not be sour at all. You won't taste the sourness if you're doing it right and you're keeping your starter fresh. And so if I want it to be real sour, I'm going to let it ferment for 24, 48 hours. And then it'll be like, oh yeah, that's definitely sourdough bread. And so that's a good start. Why is fermentation so important to our health? This is an interesting thing, and it's going to shift us into the fermented food. When we ferment foods, what we're doing is number one, we're increasing the shelf life or the longevity of it, but we're also unlocking different nutrients. For example, when I take the humble cabbage, which is not necessarily known as a nutritional powerhouse, and I create sauerkraut, or I let it ferment, it all of a sudden transforms into a food that's very high in vitamin C, very vitamin rich. And so the transformation process is what we're after. And so when we ferment a vegetable, we change the physiology of it. And all of a sudden, this food is different. We create what's called probiotics, and you're all familiar with that probiotic term. And so shift back for a moment to the person with gluten intolerance. I got 3 minutes. Imagine you're walking through the forest, and we come across this beautiful idyllic meadow, and the wildflowers are growing and the grasses are growing, and there's a little babbling brook that's going through it, and Bambi's off to the side munching on the grass. You got it? I mean, it's Walt Disney's picture, right? And all of a sudden a crop duster comes by and just sprays it and with Roundup. Thanks, Monsanto. And so the Roundup kills all the vegetation. And then it starts to rain, and it rains hard. I'm from Woodland Hills. If you saw Woodland Hills on the news, we got mudslide. We got 1.5 inches of rain in 35 minutes. And it stayed just in this one spot. So we had this flash flood that invaded somebody's basement. And so the rains come down, and the topsoil just gets washed away, and you're left with this rocky, eroded soil. That's what happens to our digestive tract. We take antibiotics. It kills the good bacteria in our gut. We drink chlorinated water. It washes things away. And pretty soon we've got this decimated, barren wasteland of a digestive tract. No wonder we're sick. We're malnourished, right? And so if we're going to heal the meadow, what do we need to do? Can I just get some wildflower seeds and grass seeds and strewn them around? It will help in little pockets where there's some soil, and it'll help a little bit, but not that much. If I'm serious about this, what I need to do is I need to bring in compost. And I need to bring in lots of it, truckload after truckload, and build that soil up, and then plant the seeds, and then they'll take root, and then they'll hold the soil, and hopefully Bambi will come back. How do we heal the digestive tract? And this is the key. We need compost. So what's compost in our digestive tract? The compost is what the scriptures referred to as mild foods. And what are mild foods? Mild foods are foods that don't irritate your gut or your digestive tract. If you have somebody with celiac disease or Crohn's disease or gluten intolerance, and you say, you need to be a raw vegan, because a raw vegan is what's going to help your diet, it will tear them to shreds. What they need is mild food, which is foods that are quote, overly cooked, your root vegetables and things like that. We do bone broth. Our grandmothers wouldn't think about making soup without a soup bone, right? Why? Because of the mineral and the cartilage and all the nutrients that will help replace the minerals that the phytic acid took out. And so it will create that compost. Now, what are the wildflowers and the seeds? That's the probiotics. And so we eat foods like sauerkraut and yogurt and kefir and kombucha and kvass and all the and kimchi, which if you haven't had good homemade kimchi, you haven't lived, right? I mean, it's phenomenal. Most people, their relationship with sauerkraut is something that's limp and out of a can. That's not very good. I make this one. If you're familiar with the Vietnamese food pho, it's spelled P-H-O, but I named this one pho, rhymes with duh, so you'll know how to pronounce it. We use these herbs and spices that are wonderful. Star anise and cinnamon and ginger and fennel and so we can spice things however we want. Here's a brilliant combination: beets and cumin. If you like the spice cumin, it goes remarkable with beets. The point is, if we're going to heal the digestive tract, you need to be eating lots of bone broth. And I had a little girl that came to see me from North Carolina, and she was 2 weeks away from a total colostomy because she had Crohn's disease so bad. And so she started on bone broth. She was drinking 2 quarts a day. And long story short, she was my height. I'm 5'5". She was 5'5". She weighed 71 pounds. I weigh 171 pounds. So imagine 100 pounds less than what you see here. And so within 8 months, she was up to 120 pounds, gained 50 pounds. She looked great. Went back to her medical doctor. He says, "I don't believe this. I need to scope you." And so did a scope, went in there with the camera to see what the intestine looks like, and he says, "I don't know what you did. I don't want to know what you did," because you understand, if they knew what you did, they would have to document it, which would be outside of the standard of care, and they can get in trouble. So didn't want to know what she did, but if it ever comes back, give me a call. The point is, we can heal people that are literally on death's doorstep if we do the right thing. It's not going to be passive. It's a pain in the neck to sometimes heal the body. But which is better, healing the digestive tract or walking around for the rest of your life at 15 years old with a bag on the outside catching your poop? I mean, what a way to live. And so the point is, you do what feels right. You replace your fear with faith. You learn as much as you can. If you feel prompted by the Spirit to learn something, you learn it. And understand that you don't need to accept everything that is taught to you. Don't believe everything that I tell you. But if the Spirit confirms to your spirit that sauerkraut is true, pay attention. If it says you should do something, then you do it. I think I'm done. Am I? Okay.